Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Busy time in the NBA. Free agency starts up in just a couple of days, but already we've got a post-draft trade to talk about. Lots of ramifications from it. Keith, how are you doing, man? It involved your team. Got to be a little bit excited, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one broke while we were recording our marathon
Yes.
NBA draft recap show. So check that out, guys. We don't blame you if you pause it and have to split it up into a couple viewings. It's about 2 hours long, but we talk all 30 teams, every single pick, all the trades, transactions, everything there. And the teams that didn't make a pick or do a trade or something like that, we still talked about them too. So go check that out
Yeah.
with that video. Yeah. So you'll get a little bit of live reaction to the first trade that Boston made on that one, but then it expanded and got bigger, and I don't think we went back to it after that point. So we'll get into that today, and then they're going to make a second trade with the Dallas Mavericks. So let's get into those. I also go USA.
That's right.
Big win this morning for Team USA. Recording this on Saturday morning, they rolled over the Czech Republic today.
Yep.
So on to the knockout phase and the good stuff for Team USA. So, first trade: Boston, Atlanta, and Sacramento.
And before we dive into the trade,
sure.
Happy birthday, Keith! Everybody in the comments, you need to wish Keith a happy birthday. He's spending his birthday with all of us talking NBA basketball. So happy birthday, man.
Hey, man, that's a pretty good birthday for me. Talking NBA trades with my buddy here and getting into stuff. I'm psyched. So this is, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's my wife is on the way home with some barbecue,
right.
and I'm going to eat good today and watch sports and talk about the NBA. So that's a pretty good birthday in my book.
All right.
So first trade, Boston, Atlanta, and Sacramento. The Celtics are trading Tristan Thompson. They're going to acquire Chris Dunn and Bruno Fernando. No, not Bruno Caboclo, as Woj. And then I don't think he ever fixed it.
No.
I think he just kind of left it out there to the winds. So, hopefully Woj got a good night's sleep. He's earned it.
Oh, yeah.
For sure after the last couple of days. Atlanta will acquire DeLon Wright from the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings will acquire Tristan Thompson. And then I think Boston's getting a second-round pick in that deal also there. So from the Celtics side, once they acquired Al Horford and then Moses Brown was tossed into that deal, it was kind of fait accompli that they were going to trade Tristan Thompson. I think we all saw that writing on the wall. They just had too many bigs. They needed more ball handlers and wings on this team, and that's what they're kind of getting in Chris Dunn. Didn't play really at all for the Hawks last year. Wasn't healthy until the very end of the regular season. Then made a cameo appearance in a couple of different playoff games. But if Dunn is healthy, he's a pretty good defender, decent ball handler, decent passer, not really a true point guard, not a great scorer, not a great shooter. Sounds an awful lot like every other guard on the Celtics in the past 10 years. But he can defend, he gets after it. So we'll take that, right? We'll take that in exchange for Thompson. And then Bruno Fernando, what's interesting with him is now it's yet another young big man. So something's going to have to give there because they've got too many bigs. But you didn't really lose one in this trade. So somebody's going to go out of that group because they've got Horford, Robert Williams, Grant Williams, who they like more as a small ball five than anything else. Then you got Moses Brown and now Bruno Fernando. So something's going to give there. They're not going to carry all those guys into the roster for them. So I think for the Celtics, this isn't a trade where you're saying, oh man, what a home run. This makes them a contender or anything. It's a rebalancing trade. And it did also save them about $3 million more towards the luxury tax. They're not going to be a cap space team, but they've got tax concerns and don't want to be too deep into the tax. And we'll get into that as we get into the second trade that they made after. But yeah, that's what this initial trade does here is it gives them about $3 million more in flexibility, total of about 11 million-ish in flexibility under the tax line for the moment. And then we'll see.
And then looking just all around, I think it was a nice trade for all of it. Like you said, it's a single. This isn't a home run. This is a single for each one of these teams. It's more about just plugging in the right pieces, then okay, we're really going to step up right now in terms of our overall talent level, or we're going to take a step back and we're going to get some future draft capital or something like that. It's not really one of those moves. It's more of a lateral move in terms of talent all the way around. You're just getting the pieces that you think were going to fit a little bit better to round out your roster. That's all this is about. And as much as we can say, oh, compared to Russell Westbrook got traded the other day, the excitement level isn't going to be as high on this. Yeah, but these sorts of trades still matter. These little moves within the margins, they 100% matter. You hit enough singles and you can start scoring some runs. So I do think that it was good to see these teams complete this move and round out their rosters a little bit more.
Absolutely. On the Hawks side, they get a much needed backup for Trae Young and DeLon Wright. DeLon Wright also has enough size. He can play beside Trae Young in some lineups if you need him to as well. So I like that addition. DeLon Wright's a guy who I think his rep took a little bit of a hit when Dallas got him because I think people expected him to be more than what he maybe is. And I think that makes it a little tough. But I think overall, DeLon Wright is, he's a pretty good player. And I think, in the right role where he's I see him as maybe 15 minutes a night behind Trae Young. And then he's probably going to play, 10 minutes a night next to him. Total. So he's about, 20 to 25 minute a night guy off the bench for the Hawks. And I really like that pickup for them. And then Tristan the Kings, either great depth at that position if they retain Richaun Holmes, or he can start for them if they lose Richaun Holmes in free agency. It's important to remember the Kings want to keep Richaun Holmes, but they're extremely limited on how much they can pay him. They're limited to about 4 years, a little over $40 million. Total, and what they can give him, about $47 million or so. And another team, could come in with a bigger offer and beat that. The reason the Kings are limited is they only have early bird rights on Richaun Holmes, so that makes it a little difficult there. So so we'll see, what they ultimately do with Holmes and Thompson and all that. And then, I expect Thompson maybe doesn't finish the season in Sacramento. Let's see how the Kings year goes. But, he could get moved on. Want to go to the second one?
Oh, yeah, but first I just want to mention that for the Kings side of this, one of the things that we shouldn't overlook is that, remember, they kind of got the rug pulled out from under them. They thought they were getting Kyle Kuzma and Montrezl Harrell. And obviously that didn't go down. That was going to be in the Buddy Hield trade. Instead, those pieces went to the Washington Wizards in the Russell Westbrook trade. So this is a nice pivot for them to find somebody in Tristan Thompson who can kind of give you a similar skill set to what Montrezl Harrell has. So you're getting that kind of rebounding presence. So I like this as a really quick adjustment for the Kings to still fill that role on their team, even though they didn't get the guy they thought they were getting.
Yeah, and they didn't need DeLon Wright anymore because they drafted Davion Mitchell at the draft. So you've got, that's a whole situation that they're going to have to sort through and figure out as well. But yeah, I think all around, this is a good trade for all three teams involved. The second trade Boston's going to make is, let's talk one more aspect. Sorry, I don't want to forget it with the Dunn Horford swap. Is the Celtics are going to bring Chris Dunn into the Enes Kanter trade exception. That's why these trades are happening right now. They have to happen using this year's league salary or this league year's salaries. So the 2020-21 salaries versus the 21-22 salaries. Because when they flip, those guys each make just a little too much to fit into those trade exceptions. So what Boston is going to do is they're going to bring Dunn into the Kanter trade exception. They're going to bring Fernando into my guess is probably part of the Walker or Tice trade exception. We'll see there. And then they're going to create a new trade exception for Tristan Thompson. That'll be either 9.2 million or 7.7 million, depending on how they bring in Fernando. So that creates that one. Now, they also have 11 million left of the Gordon Hayward trade exception. If you remember, they used 17 million of that 28 million on Evan Fournier at last year's trade deadline. Now, what they'll do with that is that's how they're going to acquire Josh Richardson. So much like Montrezl Harrell had to opt in order for the Lakers to be able to trade him, Josh Richardson had to opt in for next year because you can't trade a pending free agent.
Right.
But he's going to get traded on this year's $10.8 million salary, which fits within the Hayward trade exception. They'll have a little bit left of it, but an unusable amount, and then it will expire shortly after free agency opens. So that's going to be how that one goes down. For the Maverick side of this, it's much easier to understand what they're doing. They're wiping away $11.6 million in 21-22 salary off their books. They are clearing the decks to make a run in free agency, whether that's Kyle Lowry, Mike Conley, Lonzo Ball in a sign and trade. Let's keep putting point guard names out there because it seems like that's where they're headed.
Spencer Dinwiddie,
While
any of those guys. Yeah.
Dinwiddie, yeah, absolutely. While having enough left over to then re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr. and keep him. So Dallas is doing everything they can to clear all their obligations and make their moves in free agency. So that's where the Mavs side of this is. For Boston, I get it. Josh Richardson, not a perfect fit. He struggled a little bit in an off-ball role with Philadelphia, struggled in Dallas to some extent. He's probably guys a little bit better with the ball in his hands. But I go back to something Brad Stevens said when he took over, that everything that they're going to do is about building around Tatum and Brown. And then Ime Udoka at his presser, Stevens said that again. And then Udoka called them pillars of the franchise multiple times. So to me, this is what they're doing. They're putting guys around them that aren't going to take the ball away from them a lot, but can defend. They want to be bigger than they were the last couple of years with Kemba Walker, because teams in the playoffs, especially, right, we know teams hunt mismatches.
Yeah.
So they don't want to have that. So now they'll be very switchable. They'll be able to switch everything. So I think what they did was they added between Horford, Richardson, Dunn. They added 3 guys who can really kind of hold their own defensively and do their thing, and kind of make it work, switchable on the defensive end. So we'll see. I mean, they're not done yet, so let's see where they go. But I think overall, right now, the Celtics are, they're making use of those trade exceptions that would have been gone fairly soon, and they're doing what they can to try to stay relevant, give themselves options and pieces and those kind of things.
I think Josh Richardson is one of those guys where maybe we've overreacted to a bad season in Dallas a little bit too much, to the point where he's got value as a player. A lot of people are down on him right now. Things obviously did not work with the Mavericks, but I think this is a worthwhile gamble for the Boston Celtics. I mean, you're bringing in a guy who, if it does work out, can be that switchy defender for you, that wing player. Look, every team in the NBA is looking for wings, and you might have just gotten one on a discount, and so you can't complain there. You're right about the switchy defense. I think that's going to be extremely important for Boston, and really just moving forward. And that's the way the league is going because of how many teams. And I get people that complain about this all the time. They say NBA offenses have become too consistent. They're the same across the league. Everybody runs spread the floor, high pick and roll to death, right? Well, the solution to that for a lot of teams is just be super switchy and make it so it doesn't make as much sense to run that anymore, and then you're forcing the offense to do something else. And I think the Celtics are going to be in really good position to do that, where they can have 5 guys on the floor, where even if you have the opposing big come up and set the screen, it doesn't matter. You still have somebody switching over onto the ball handler that can deal with that and can contain dribble penetration. So it's going to be really important for this new Celtics squad this new season Celtics squad to be able to do that. And I think Josh Richardson will fit that mold very, very nicely. Now, the question is, can he start knocking in that 3 ball again? We'll see. If he does, then it's definitely a great move for the Celtics.
Yeah, because if he can't, you're pretty light on shooting with him and Marcus Smart, if that's your starting backcourt. The next obvious question becomes, what does this mean for Evan Fournier? Mm-hmm. We'll see. Yeah, we don't know, so remember I said they cleared about $11 million under the luxury tax. Bringing in Richardson, they're basically right back at the tax. They've got a couple guys they could get rid of fairly easily to dodge it, but the expectation was they didn't want to be more than 10 to 12 million into the tax next year. Fournier, there are teams out there. There's a lot of buzz that there are teams that are prepping 20 million plus offers for Fournier. And I know he doesn't want to necessarily do the 1 year or 1+1 route or anything like that. He wants to get somewhere and stay there. Mm-hmm. He has a young family, so he wants to figure this out and be wherever he's going to be. So this might be part of the Celtics saying, all right, that might get a little too rich for our blood. Just where we're going. But I'll say let's just look at it. If outside of when they acquired Fournier, even if Richardson is a bench player, he's better than anybody they brought off the bench last year by a pretty wide margin. Now, you hope a couple of the kids will develop a little bit more, but Richardson at that wing ball handler position, much better than that. So that kind of we'll see what's to come. Right, we're still a couple days away from all this stuff starting. So, qualifying offer news, we'll get into that very, very quickly here to close the show. briefly, I think, mentioned it in the draft recap show with the Bulls section, but the Bulls did give a qualifying offer to Lauri Markkanen. There was a thought out there that the Bulls might kind of clear the decks a little bit. Not that they can't still do that.
Yeah,
they could still rescind the qualifying offer and renounce Markkanen and that. It's a big number for Markkanen, that qualifying offer. It is, let me make sure I have it right. Yeah, it's just over $9 million. I don't think we're going to see him just sign it.
Yeah.
Because I do think he thinks he can get more or get long-term deal somewhere else with that. But you don't want to let this go too long if you're Chicago, because that is within the range that he could just sign it and play it out for a year. They also one of their two-way players, Devon Dotson, got a qualifying offer as well. The guard that I know they like quite a bit. They'll probably come back on a two-way contract.
I think this is interesting with what's going to happen with Markkanen, because I don't know, I would assume anyway, that he's not a player that teams are going to be beating down the door trying to get, right? Yeah. Like there's not going to be general managers camped outside his house for the moment that free agency begins or anything like that, right? No. In order to get Markkanen. And I'm sure there's some talks that have gone on, right? Because we know talks are going on. The NBA may have sent out a little warning like, hey, free agency doesn't start right until August 2nd, all that, right? Okay, that's fine. But we know the talks are already going on. But Markkanen, I just don't see there being a huge demand for. So I think if he is restricted, I don't know how that's going to play out. Like, you're not going to have all these teams willing to tie up their cap space in order to send him a big offer. So this could be one of those situations where we don't see a resolution here till closer towards the end of free agency, the waning days of the free agency period. Because if Markkanen is expecting a big offer out of the gates or something like that, I just don't think that's going to be there for him. But again, I don't think it's in his best interest to play on the qualifying offer either. I don't know. This is one of the most difficult free agency situations, I think, to call going on in the NBA right now, because I don't know that the Bulls are sold on him, but I don't think anybody else is sold on him enough to really go after him. I know the Bulls don't want to just lose him for nothing, so of course they're going to give him that qualifying offer and make him restricted. But I just have no idea which way this is really going to go. He's in a tough spot.
Yeah, he is. I think you could see a handful of teams maybe say, remember when Kyle Anderson was in the spot a few years ago, and the Grizzlies gave him their full mid-level for 4 years when he was a restricted free agent. That could be the way this goes. Maybe a team throws the full mid-level at Markkanen, because I do think $9-10 million, that's not bad for him if you think he can stay healthy and you've got the right kind of defenders on your team. So that could be the way it goes. It's just like I think where you were kind of getting to too was finding that fit.
Yes,
that's where it's a little awkward. What team does he really fit on? Oddly enough, they're not going to have the spending power to do it, but I think he could fit like on a team like Philadelphia.
Sure.
I think he might make a little bit of sense as a stretch big there, where you've got enough defense to protect him. That one's it's interesting, I guess, to say the least. With him, a couple other qualifying offer news, just because we do like to be completionists here on the show. Nico Mannion, two-way player, his qualifying offer was extended. Breaking news. Want to do breaking news?
Yeah, let's do breaking news.
The Houston Rockets are not picking up Avery Bradley's $5.9 million team option for next season. He'll be an unrestricted free agent.
Okay.
That's per Shams Charania of The Athletic. Not a real surprise, right? Doesn't really have a home there on that rebuilding team. Now they've got guards kind of coming out their ears too, with Kevin Porter Jr. Stuff.
Follow contenders and teams that Bradley previously played for are expected to have a strong interest in him. Okay, so the Celtics, the Lakers, the Pistons aren't contenders.
Clippers.
I forgot about the Clippers. I had repressed that.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so the Clippers, the Celtics, and the Lakers. Right?
Yeah. I'd bring them home to Boston. I love AB. He's one of my favorite guys in the league, so I'd have him back in Boston. So Yeah, not a surprise from the Rocket side.
No.
Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, drafted Josh Christopher at the point guard spot. You get John Wall. That's the right move for the Rockets.
Yes.
All right, back into the big news though. These
The
qualifying offers
offers
that I was getting into. Nico Mannion, qualifying offer from the Warriors. He was a guy they drafted and a two-way player for them last year. He's playing quite well for Italy in the Olympics. So keep an eye on him. I think he's a guy who maybe comes back on a regular contract, pending how the Warriors roster comes together. Or he might be somebody who comes in starts on a two-way and then eventually gets converted into a standard deal. Denver Nuggets, Marcus Howard got a qualifying offer. Howard didn't play much in the regular season. Denver doesn't have a G League team. But then he played in the playoffs when every other guard was hurt, and he actually showed some stuff. He's tiny, and he's a scoring guard. He's only about 5'10", maybe 5'11", and he's a scorer. So good on the Nuggets. Probably bring him back on the two-way. And then Saban Lee, this one I do find more interesting than these other two guys a little bit, because he showed more for the Pistons last year. He actually played kind of well. He started a handful of games for Detroit. I think he's pretty good. I think he's a pretty tough point guard who gets after guys on the defensive end. He plays really hard, really strong at driving the ball. He's learning how to be a playmaker. So I think he'll be back, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's on a standard contract with Detroit and he's in the mix behind Killian Hayes at the point guard spot. And then it was reported a long time ago by Chris Haynes, but it finally happened. They announced the draft rights to Jalen Hands, who's a guy who they got in a draft trade last year, draft rights trade last year. So, and then the only other piece of news I don't think we've talked about was Edmund Sumner had his team option picked up by the Indiana Pacers, just under $3 million. So I love that for the Pacers. That's a team that's very expensive, looking for help where they can get it on the cheap. And I think Sumner gives them that. He really started to show some stuff last season.
Yeah. So that's going to be, well, look, I mean, again, we talked about this earlier. These moves seem minor, and they are, right? They are mostly minor moves. But these are the types of moves that can really make a difference in the long run for teams, because you're able to stack up some guys that can at least come in and give you minutes off the bench. That's what a lot of these guys would do for their clubs. So, important to note all of this stuff. Man, this is I love the NBA offseason, and I'm giddy with anticipation of what we're going to see, the chaos that is going to be unleashed within the next couple of days here.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's it's going to get crazy. As much as, follow the rules in life and follow laws, but I hope these teams are like, yeah, cute. Your memo was nice, but we're tampering our butts off.
That's
and
right.
We're going to start getting signings breaking and all that other stuff. I could do if it wasn't today. I would like to get a little bit of downtime today on my birthday, but if it's Sunday or even starting early on Monday, but officially 6 p.m. Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday. So for those of you here on the East Coast, you finish out your work day, go home, pour yourself a drink, and post up on Twitter, and the deals are going to come flowing in probably fast and furious if past years are any indication. We'll be back to cover probably tomorrow as we get the final option decisions made and qualifying offer decisions made. There's still a couple options out there with a little bit of intrigue. Serge Ibaka being one. Sounds like Chris Paul definitely going to opt out there. So we're getting down to it with those ones. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with Bobby Portis yet. My guess is he opts out as well. So we have a pretty good handle, but we'll keep an eye. And then there's a couple qualifying offers that kind of could go either way. So we'll keep an eye on those as well. But yeah, we'll be here, all the way through for you here on Front Office Show.
That's right. Make sure you do subscribe. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. And of course, like this video. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.